There are a number of topics that come up when we talk about Yugoslavian ammo. However, the primary topic I'd like to focus on today is the difference in the commercially available options from the 1950s and the commercially available options from the late 1970s. Specifically, I have examples from 1953, 1978, and 1979. In this video, we're going to break this topic down component by component and talk about some of the issues with the earlier ammo, such as less consistency and split cases. However, before we can jump into that part, we need to talk a little bit about the history of these two rounds and the factories that they come from. The earlier ammo from the 1950s can be found labeled two ways. The first way is Factory 11, and the second way is Factory 12. Factory 11 ammo is what we in the West are more familiar with, and it is what we call the PPU factory. So even this modern commercial ammo and this ammo from the 70s is produced in the same factory. However, while Factory 11 is located in Serbia, Factory 12 is located in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is the Igman Zavad arsenal in Kajnik in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, the loadings that we are most familiar with seeing from Factory 12 will be produced anywhere from 1952 to 1955. They did continue producing ammo after that, and they even continued producing ammo until today. However, that ammo is much less likely to be seen on the commercial market than the ammo from 1952 to 1955. But when you see ammo from Igman, Igman is in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Today's topic, though, specifically, is ammo produced from 1952 to 1955 in that Factory 12, or ammo produced with those same specifications in Factory 11. With that out of the way, let's talk about our ammo from the 1970s. The model type of this ammo is M49. The ammo from the 1970s is produced in Factory 11. However, it's not called that anymore. Now it is just called PPU. So on the back of the head stamp, you will see these markings. Now, with that said, let's talk about the head stamps. The ammo from 1953 at the top of the head stamp has the factory code, either 11 or 12. Then it has two stars on either side, and then at the bottom it has the year of manufacture. My example is from 1953. It also has a red sealant around the primer. The ammo from the 70s is just a little bit different. It has the Slavic characters for PPU, and then at the bottom it has the date of manufacture. It also has a strong red sealant around the primer. Now let's talk about the primer. Both of these primers are corrosive, which means you should clean your bore appropriately after shooting this ammo. Personally, I pour hot water down the bore, then run a wet patch through, then run dry patches through until the barrel is dry, and then after that I run a patch with oil on it. One other thing to note is that the ammo from the 1950s does have a noticeably harder primer than the ammo from the 1970s. And so because of that, you will need to make sure that your firing pin spring is strong enough and that your firing pin is long enough to work with that ammo. With certain rifles, you will have no problem at all. With other rifles, you will need to change out some parts. I do have a video on that topic though, so I will link it so that you can see it. Now next, let's talk about the cases, and this is a slightly controversial subject because the ammo from the 1950s is somewhat prone to split cases, whereas the ammo from the 70s is not really known for this. So the first thing that I did was I weighed some empty cases. Now I want to be clear, these empty cases did still have the primer in them. This is because I didn't really have a good way to hit out the Berdan primers that these have, but I think the information will still be beneficial. I weighed 10 cases of the ammo from 1953, and it came in at 167.78 grains. However, I weighed 5 cases from the ammo from 1978 and 5 cases from the ammo from 1979, and the average there came in at 170 grains. So you'll notice I did weigh 5 of each of the second two. They came in close enough to each other that it appears that they were made to the same specification. Anyway, what that means is that the 1970s cases are 1.9% heavier than the cases from the 1950s. I also compared the lowest number I got from the 1970s ammo to the lowest number I got from the 1950s ammo. And in that instance, the 70s cases were 2.28% heavier than the 1950s ammo, which means that there is more material in these cases. Now, whether or not that's enough to make a difference is something that is arguable. However, one other feature I would like to note is that there was a wider variation in the 1950s ammo from the 1970s ammo, even though with the 70s ammo I measured 2 different years. Our difference with the 50s ammo was 6.7 grains from the lowest to the highest, and our difference with the 70s ammo was 5.1 grains from the lowest to the highest. Usually something like a higher variation of difference is a sign of lower quality control and lower quality of manufacture. Now, another thing that I did was I cut in half some cases from the 50s and the 70s, and in my subjective opinion, the 50s ammo did appear to be just a little bit thinner than the cases from the 1970s. This is subjective, so I will put pictures up on the screen and you get to choose if you think that's accurate or if you think I'm just kind of making this up. On the left, we have the ammo from 1953, and on the right, we have a round from 1979. And personally, I think it does look a little bit thinner on the wall right there, but that is subjective. There's one other detail that I noticed from the spent casings of these rounds. Brass is supposed to be malleable, and that's why it's a good case material. Basically, what happens when you fire is that the brass forms around the chamber and pushes all of the gas out of the barrel. Now, with the rounds from the 1950s, the space in front of the neck had some carbon buildup, and the spent casings from the 1970s did not have that. Here's a couple of spent rounds, and I do not know how well this is going to show up on camera, but this one is from 1953, and this one is from 1970s. You can see both cases are annulled right there. However, you can see that there is more carbon buildup on the case from the 1950s around and before the neck of the case. Whereas on the 1970s, you don't really see that. What this means is that the ammo from the 1950s did not expand as well, or expanded and contracted again too quickly, so some carbon was coming backwards towards the round. Now, this isn't really a safety issue, but metal that is softer is more likely to mold and form, whereas metal that is harder is more likely to snap when it's under stress. Now, what could be happening is, since these 1950s cases are harder, when it is under the pressure of the firing of the round, instead of the brass expanding and shaping around the chamber, it will crack. One other thing that could be leading to cracked cases is that there is more powder in the 1953 ammo. It's also firing at a higher velocity, which you could see if you compared the video I made early on in my channel from the 1958 and 1959 ammo to the video I made last week with the 1953 ammo. There is more powder in the case with the 1953 ammo. If we look at the averages, there are 3.5 more grains of powder in the 1953 ammo than there is in the ammo from the 1970s, and this is an additional difference of 8%. However, the powders are still identical in appearance. Finally, let's talk about the bullets. The bullets are nearly identical in weight and in appearance, however, there is one small difference in appearance, and it is that the ammo from the 1970s does have a slightly longer, and I guess slightly more hollow boat tail. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, the final thing that we need to talk about is performance. The 53 ammo will have less reliable primers in certain firearms. With my Mauser, recently I did not have any issues with the primer. Split cases with the 1953 ammo is very well documented. However, and this does not mean that it doesn't happen, just that I have not heard of it, I have never heard of an experience where somebody had a split case with the 1970s ammo in a properly functioning firearm. I think that this is because the brass for the 1953 ammo is thinner, has a lower quality, and it's just older, and older things start to wear out. Because of less consistency in bullet, powder, primer cases, the ammo from 1953 will likely be less accurate than the ammo from the 1970s. That doesn't mean it's bad by any means, just that it's not quite as good. Okay, let's talk about buying decisions. I can't tell you what you should buy for all of your circumstances, however, I will talk about myself. Personally, I don't do much like long-range accuracy shooting, and so because of that, the 1953 ammo is good enough for me. However, if you would like to push this round out a little bit more, and the really good Yugoslavian M75 isn't available, the other 1970s ammo does have a really good reputation. With this in mind, the ammo from the 1950s is usually somewhere between 50 and 60 cents a round. However, the ammo from the 70s, if you can find it, is often somewhere between 70 cents a round to up and beyond $1 a round. It is much harder to come by. So for my purposes, I would much rather buy a whole bunch of the ammo from the 1950s than a little bit of the ammo from the 1970s. However, I would love to hear your opinions and experiences in the comments down below. So please, like this video, that helps me out a lot, and leave a comment because I really love reading through those and reading your personal experiences with this ammo. But I'm 8mm Mauser Man, and I cut in half some brass cases, and I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John. John.